Hello everyone and welcome to the weekly career question with me, Emmy Peterson. I work as a career and transition coach here at The Bridge Coaching, and we focus on helping you with your career and creating things, tools and tips to make sure that you can make the most of your career and those niggly little day-to-day challenges that many of us have regardless of the type of job we're in. So today's question is, I don't feel very connected to my team or my manager working remotely. How do I build that connection? Now, the pandemic has meant that a lot of us have worked from home all or part of the time during the last 2 years. And for many of us, including myself, I actually started a new role as well during the pandemic. So I do have a particular video on remote onboarding. I will link that underneath this video if you want to have a closer look at that. But the key thing with connection is that when we don't see each other in person, there are a couple of things that start to happen. Most of us are social beings, even the introverts out there do like to connect with other people. So the challenge that comes out of that sometimes is simply that we lose the level of connection and we start to only talk about work tasks. We lose the coffee catch-ups, the lunchtime walks, all those kind of things. So I'm going to give you a couple of tips today if this is something that you're feeling. I've had this question in different flavors from quite a few people over the last few months. So I just wanted to share some thoughts on it that might help you feel a bit more connected to your team. So the first question to ask yourself is, how are you doing connection? And I say doing connection because connection is a behavior. So there are some things that we do, we have patterns and things that we do to connect with other people. It might be to complain about something that we jointly don't like. It could be having that chat or going to the same coffee shop with someone. So connection can look different for different people, but you are essentially doing certain activities in your workplace to get the connection. So a couple of things that you can consider firstly is, how are you getting that connection at the moment? You know, is connection for you in a work context, but you can borrow some inspiration from your personal life if you need to. But how are you getting connection, the need for connection met at the moment, and how much of that do you need in any given day? For example, I've started doing kind of a morning coffee a couple of days a week with one of my colleagues, and it's been a really beautiful experience to connect and have that chat and not necessarily talk about work, just talk about how things are going and how that person is doing in general. So it's a really nice way of replacing the lunchtime chat. So that's one sort of thing that I've done that's really helped me feel more connected to my colleagues and my team. But do pause here if you want and reflect a little bit on this question, because it is a bigger question for some people as well. For some people, the connection piece might be more around working towards a joint goal or everyone pulling their weight or something like that, which we'll get to in a moment. So when you've looked at how you feel about connection or what you need to feel connected at work, it might, be a handful of things on point number one. And secondly, I want you to start thinking about what trend, especially if you've been working from home for a while, what trend are you noticing from others? For example, are you noticing, which I certainly have, that people more and more only contact me when they need something? And it's very natural because we're working on Teams and Slack and Zoom and emails and whatever tool you might be using in your organization or in your work. But more often than not, what tends to happen is people will only reach out when they need something. And I can be a lot the same. So I try to think of this from the perspective of, if I'm noticing that other people are doing that a lot, what am I doing? Am I also doing the same thing? Am I guilty of the same thing that's annoying me? Another thing about connection is, do you actually get credit for the work that's been done? I know in some organizations there's a saying that, no feedback is good news, meaning that the task was done well. But I think more important than ever is for people to get credit for the work that they do. And if praise is due, then, of course, your work, your tasks at work, there are certain expectations of you. But that doesn't mean that people can't say thank you or well done or this was a great well executed project or something like that. So reflect a little bit on the trend that you're noticing in your environment or in your company around you. And a lot of companies are struggling at the moment to find ways of connecting their team together. People are doing little, after work drink quizzes via Zoom and things like that. And that can be really fun. But by the time that we get to the end of the work week, a lot of people are too tired to sit on yet another screen call. So that's a really important one to reflect on, is look at what you're experiencing from other people in your workplace at the moment. And finally, this is an important one to ask yourself, I've certainly held up the mirror to myself on this. So are you connecting with and or acknowledging people in your team or organization? So I told you before, I'm doing a bit of a coffee talk a couple of times a week with a colleague, which has been a beautiful way of connecting and getting to know her a little bit better. But I could get much better at doing that with more people in my organization. To check in and send a Slack message or a Teams message to someone and say, hey, good morning, I hope you had a good start to the day, without necessarily asking for anything, is a really nice thing to do. Now, if people are really busy, they might find that disruptive. And some introverts, for example, don't like to get a lot of messages. They prefer to kind of focus in on their work. But if you want to see a change in how connection is happening in your workplace, you've got to start with you. Another thing that a lot of people tell me, and this is probably relating to a future different question, is that I never get acknowledged or praised for the work that I do. My boss doesn't really acknowledge me, or my team, it's not acknowledged the huge amount of work that I put in. And you can actually help change this by giving other people credit when credit is due. I don't mean that I need you to go around and be a positivity fountain of giving everyone credit all the time. But if someone has done a really good job or helped you out, or it might not have been visible to other people in the organization because everyone's head down, whether you work remotely or face to face. So giving other people credit is a huge part of building connection in the team and in your workplace. So I'd encourage you to go away and think about those 3 parts. And if you are finding this really challenging, I'd love for you to get in touch with me and we can have a further chat about it. Finally, and this has been said in many ways by many wise people before me, but one thing that I want you to take away is be the change you wish to see. Individual actions will always start creating ripple effects. Even if it feels like you might be in a toxic workplace, in which case you might need to look at other ways, or you might even need to look at exiting that workplace. But if you're just feeling a slight form of disconnect or confusion, as many of us do as we're trying to navigate this new way of working for a lot of us, it's really important to remember that you can make a difference, and what you do and what you say absolutely does. So have a think about that as you enter your work week. And finally, what can you do now? Well, I would love for you to share this video with someone in your world, whether it's a colleague or a friend or a family member or something. So feel free to send them the link to this video and share it with them if they need to hear a message like that this week. And also send in any of your questions. Some of you already have. I really do appreciate it. It helps me make sure that these videos are as relevant as possible for you. So if you have a question that you'd like us to cover here, or that you would just want to have answered via email, just one-on-one with myself, feel free to send that through to hello@thebridgecoaching.com.au. Have a wonderful week. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.